Hello friends, we will discuss a very important topic of polity, and the topic is federalism and unitary bias of constitution. This is a very important topic because we have to understand our concept of constitution because we live in our country and any citizen must understand their constitution. So in the S.R. Bomani case of 1994, Supreme Court laid down the principle that Indian Constitution is a blend of federalism and unitary bias. So there is no global consensus for federalism, the definition of federalism, but it laid down the five principle. If we have a five principle, then we can say that the constitution is a federal constitution. But Indian constitution is not a typical federalism; it is a combination of federalism and unitary bias. We will look at the difference between the federalism that the Indian Constitution have and the typical federalism. So the federalism must have the division of power between the center and the state. We must understand that the division of power between center and the state is such that no one is inferior or subordinate to one another. For example, if we think that center is superior or state is inferior or subordinate to center, then it is not that. The case is that center and state are equal. So the division of power is such that it establishes a dual polity, a coordinate polity in which the power is divided between both of them. So such a constitution must be a written constitution. Such a constitution must be a supreme constitution. Means that the constitution must be supreme than any other law of the country. And next thing is that the constitution must be rigid, and also the authority of the court means that the court must be independent and independent so that it can solve the problem of the conflict between the center and the state. So we will look at the next thing. So why such constitution must be written? Written means that there are two types of constitution: written and unwritten. Unwritten does not mean that the constitution is not written. I repeat, unwritten does not mean that the constitution is not written, but it means that it has not been organized to form a single document. A written constitution is one which is organized to form a single document, as we have in our Indian constitution. So if we go at the New Delhi, the Rashtrapati Bhavan or Sansad Bhavan, we find that a copy of constitution is there, the original constitution is there, and we find a document which is organized, and it has been clearly laid down that what is the center, state, and all these. So our constitution has been a written constitution in which everything is documented. Why written constitution? Because if it is not written, then the center, whosoever be more powerful, either center or state, they must to capture the power and they will take in the favor of their own. So we understand that why such constitution must be written, because to avoid any conflict between the center and the state. Second thing is that the constitution must be supreme because if it is not supreme, then it will lead to a conflict between the both of them. Why conflict? Because the powerful one will try to capture their power and try to what we can say, supervise or subordinate the other one. So such constitution must be supreme also because it limits the power between the center and the state. If it is not supreme, then the power will not be limited. So this constitution is supreme. So it said that the center has the power to make law on the central list, and the state has the power to make law on the central state list. So such a constitution is supreme, and if so it limits the power between both of them, that center cannot make law on the state list under ordinary circumstances. So this is the meaning of supremacy of the constitution. Next thing is that rigidity of the constitution. Rigidity does not mean that the constitution cannot be amended. So some people think that the rigidity means that the constitution cannot be amended, but this is wrong. Rigidity means that it is not easy for any party, either center or state, to amend the constitution. So in this case, the center at the central level, so the constitution is rigid. It means that at some places we find that center cannot easily amend the constitution. So this is important because if the center is powerful, if the constitution is flexible, then center has authority. Center has authority to it can make any law without referring to the state. So it will lead to a problem to the state and make it subordinate. So the constitution under federalism must be rigid so that it prevent the any misuse of power by the center. So rigidity means that if before amending a certain section or certain part of the constitution, the center has to consult with the state, and without the ratification of the state by half of the state, the center cannot make law. So we find that under some part, the center cannot easily amend the constitution, though it can amend the constitution, but with the help of the state, so that the state's sake can also be taken care. Next thing is that authority of the court. Authority of court means that the court must be divided in such a way that it will be independent of the power between both. Also, why authority of court is important, independence is important, because it must, and someone must be there, someone independent body must be there who can interpret and adjudicate the dispute between the center and the state. So such independence must be maintained. So such is the feature of the federalism. If the court is not independent and it is in the favor of the center, then it will be loss for the state. And if such court is in the favor of the state, then it will loss for center. So such court must be independent of both of them. This is the feature of the Indian Constitution, that is the federalism. Next thing is that our Indian Constitution is also is unitary bias. Federalism is there, means that we have taken care of the sake of state, but also it is a unitary bias, means that it is more tilted toward the center. How can we say that? First thing, center has a power. Central government has the power to change the name, area, and boundary of a state, of any state, without the sake of the state. It means that if the state said that no, we do not have to change the name, our area, but if the parliament think that no, we have to change it, then the central government can change it, then the parliament can change it. Because under the Article 3 of Constitution, it says that the Parliament has the sole power to change any name and area or boundary of a state. For example, Telangana state has been formed by using the Article 3, and also we must also understand one thing is that the real power has been given to state real power has not been given to state under this regard. So the real power has been given to center. So it is unitary bias, means centrally biased to the center. First thing. Second thing is that we know that the division of power is there between the center and the state, as we have discussed here, the division of power between center and state, and we find that the largest and the most revenue generating items in the center list, and is given the largest, means that center list contains 97 items under which the central government can make law. State and also state has only 62 or 61 items under which the state government can make law. So we find that under the central government has the largest because and most revenue generating items in their list. So we can say that the central government has more financial strength, means that central government has more finance than state government. So it devolves the power, it's devolved the taxation. Now next thing is that the governor of the state is appointed by the center. So central government has the power to appoint someone who can look at the affairs of the state, and it is appointed by the central government. So it is a check on the state and whether it is functioning according to the law or not. So it shows that the center has more power. Next thing is that the residual power. Residual power means that suppose we find that in certain circumstances 97 item is given in the central list, 61 or 62 in the state list, and and some in the concurrent list. If something occurred, some certain unprecedented happen, then who has the power? The central government has the power to make law if something is not mentioned in the constitution. So the residual power is with the center. So we find that it is biased toward the center. Next thing is that under the concurrent list, the central government can make law, and if the state government can also make law. But if the central government has to make law, means parliament has to make law. In that case, the parliament law is valid, and the law made by the state will be null and void. Next thing is that under extraordinary circumstances, as we were mentioned earlier, the central government of parliament can also make law on the state list. So we will find that there are five we can say that five circumstances under which the central government can make law. The first thing is that if the Rajya Sabha, I need a time to rough this, so wait for a second. So these are the five extraordinary circumstances in which the parliament has power to make law. The first thing is that if the Rajya Sabha passes a resolution that it is impedient, it is expedient in the national interest that the central government expedient in national interest to do so, passed by a special majority of not less than 2/3, means that the Rajya Sabha passes a resolution in which it said that it is in the national interest that the parliament has to make law. So the parliament get authority to make law because of the Article 249, which says that the parliament can do this after the passing a resolution by the Rajya Sabha by a special majority of not less than 2/3 of the total member present and voting. So the next thing is that under the national emergency, the parliament can also make law on the state list. The power of making a law get from the Article 250, that is Article 353. So such a law is valid for 6 months after the end of the national emergency. So we find that also in this case the parliament has authority to make law. The next thing is that under the precedent rule, under Article 256, it is mentioned that if the president devolves the power, if the president says that president declares that now parliament has also authority to make law on the state list, then parliament can do so, because the power from where it gets power from the president rule under Article 256, sorry, and the president is saying that parliament can also make law. So the parliament gets power from president saying, means president devolving its power to make law. Next thing is that if two or more states request that it is if two or more states request that it is desirable for the parliament to make law, then parliament get the authority because of the request or consent of the two or more states. Example, we find that the Punjab and the Haryana were not able to make law on the Chandigarh list, so they devolved their power to the parliament and said that it is desirable for the parliament to make law on make law, and the parliament gets power because both of the state Chandigarh and Punjab are ready, and they get the consent or the request from both of them. Next thing is that if an international treaty, if an international treaty is to implement it, then the parliament has a power. Parliament get automatically power to make law on the state list, because under such circumstances the parliament go on each and every state to say that make law. So to fulfill the international binding treaty, the parliament can make law on any state list. We can find this example, the environmental law. The environmental law is made by the parliament because India has ratified the international treaty regarding the environment. So the parliament gets the power and make law on state list. So we find that So that under these circumstances, the parliament has power to make law on the state list. So we can say that our constitution is also more unitary biased, though it has a federal nature. So we were discussing what we have said in the beginning, that our constitution is not a typical federal. What is this typical federal? Typical federal means two things. The first thing is that typical federal nature, the state which are combined to form a union must be a sovereign state. Must be a sovereign state, and sovereign state means that earlier they were having a power to law on their own on their particular area. So if such a sovereign state come together and form agreement, then this example of a typical federal. Second thing is that such a sovereign state devolve their power of making law. It means that some part of their sovereignty has been given to form a federal nature. Means they have given their sovereign nature to make law. For example, we find that the USA, United States of America, has formed because of the is a typical federal in which the 30 independent state combined together, 30 sovereign state combined together to form a United States of America. So that was the example of a typical federal. But Indian constitution is not a typical federal, because the state, our state, for example, UP, Bihar, and Odisha or Madhya Pradesh example, they are not does not have their sovereign nature. They are very much part of the union, so they cannot they are not formed because of the agreement. That is, the union is not formed because of the agreement between these states. So we can say that our constitution is not a typical federal in nature. So we have discussed the topic. Now we will meet in the next lecture. Thank you.